Hey, hello everyone, and thank you all for coming. Welcome to our Clienteling 101 series. I will be your host. My name is Katie Tame, and I am a content writer at BSPK. Today, we are going to be focusing on crafting your clienteling strategy. And before we start, I just want to ask you all to mute yourself. And if you have any questions, please just drop them in the chat. With us today, we have Jeff Ellis to answer all your questions. Jeff is Vice President of Sales and Business Development at BSPK, and Jeff brings with him a wealth of knowledge. He has worked in the luxury goods industry, working with brands such as Tiffany, Hermes, and Gucci. So thank you for joining us today, Jeff.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And do you mind quickly giving us a quick definition of clienteling, just for those who weren't here before?
Absolutely. Yeah, clienteling is really any action that a client advisor takes to strengthen the relationship with their client. So it could be, something sales driven, such as, reaching out to your clients about new products, or it could be just as simple as, reaching out to wish them a happy birthday or just saying hello. So really any action that the client advisor takes to build that relationships, to strengthen that relationship is clienteling.
I like that, strengthening connections. And wonderful. Without further ado, we will start. So start with, I understand you put together a short graphic. So what are the steps to create a clienteling strategy?
Sure. Well, why don't we go to the graphic that I created? We can walk you through that. So in creating a clienteling strategy, it's really vital to decide what your goals are going to be and set your goals. And this is going to be different for each person, for each brand, but you need to decide what you're trying to do. So whether that's graduating clients from one spending tier into the next, or whether it's something more qualitative, like providing a better experience, or just reaching out to lapsed clients from the previous year. So you need to decide what your goals are going to be. What do you want to accomplish? The second step would be to create an action plan and decide, well, what are the specific behaviors that need to be enabled in order to make those goals a reality? So if you're trying to graduate clients from one spending tier into the next, the actions for that would be, we need to decide who the clients are that we wish to graduate. What are we going to be reaching out about? What is our messaging? What are the communication channels that we're going to use? But it's going to be different depending on what your goals are. Once you decide what your goals are, and once you have an action plan, then it's important to decide, well, how are we going to measure and track success? I think it's important to be able to measure whatever your goals are, because if you can't measure it, you can't track it. And if you can't track it, you can't manage to it. So it's really important to figure out a way to manage that and measure it. Once you decide how you're going to measure your performance, now you need to manage the performance. So this is where it becomes important to communicate to your team. You need to ensure that you're speaking to your clienteling strategy daily, during your morning meeting, during your touch bases with your team. It's going to be so important to be having these conversations every single day and referencing your clienteling strategy every single day. And most importantly, I think it's important for leadership to ask for feedback. Just telling somebody, okay, this is what we're going to be doing, isn't enough. You really need to ask your team, how do you feel that it's working? Where do you feel that the challenges are? What challenges are you having personally, and how can I best support you in order to be successful? So I think those are the main steps. Very simplified version, of course, but you really need to first decide what your goals are, create that action plan, decide how you're going to measure and track performance, and then finally managing the plan and asking for feedback.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I think that's a really clear and succinct way to start with clienteling. So in a recent interview, our founder and CEO, Zornitsa Stepanova, said the future is in the data. What do you think she meant by that, Jeff?
Well, I think that, when you're managing a large client base, there's so much information to keep track of, right? All of the sales data for your customers. There's all of the qualitative information about them. What their hobbies are, what are their special dates. Lots and lots of information. And I think as a client advisor, you can maybe manage 10 to 15 clients in your head or on paper, but the reality is that most client advisors are juggling hundreds of clients. Those could be VICs, but also new clients who have great opportunity to to be the VICs of tomorrow. And when you have that much information at your fingertips, you really need a platform to manage all of that information. So using the latest advents in technology with different clienteling platforms, CRM platforms, new advents with artificial intelligence, AI, all of these tools can help you to provide a memorable client experience. And on the client side, they really shouldn't see the technology, right? The technology is really for client advisors, and on the brand side, it's really just to give you those tailored recommendations for who you should be contacting, when you should be contacting them, why you should be contacting them. A good clienteling platform is going to provide you with that guidance and essentially kind of be your mentor for what you should be working on a daily basis. But ultimately, I think there's so much information to juggle, so much to handle, and in a modern world where we're helping so many people on a daily basis, we really need the right tools in our toolkit to help us to provide that superior experience to our customers.
Great, thank you. So in today's digital age, how can technology help client advisors with clienteling?
Sure. Well, I think I touched on that a little bit with the last question. And, I really think that, there's so many new advents in technology. When you read the news, it's really fascinating just with the capabilities and the pace that technology is making these days. With BSPK, for example, our platform is constantly evolving. And, when I look at our own roadmap for new features that are on the horizon, it's just mind blowing, the things that our engineering team comes up with. But I really think regardless of what clienteling platform that your brand is using, I think it's important to ensure that that you're constantly exploring what's out there and keeping track of of all the latest things that are happening in the tech world that can help support you in order to provide that consistent and top-notch client experience. And ultimately, if you don't, your competitors are going to, right? So it's really important to stay on top of technology. It's the future of retail, and I think being able to utilize all of the possibilities and all of the best tools in your toolkit, it's going to allow you to be as successful as you can be.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I think clienteling is a great example of a tool that can be harnessed to elevate the sales experience and empower sales associates. So great, thank you.
Of course.
Moving on, how can client advisors foster an emotional connection through clienteling?
Sure, I think that's a great question. Well, I think there's two parts to the answer here. I think part of this is going to be a focus on customer service, and the second part is the clienteling. So what I mean by that is when the client is in front of you, when they're in the store, that's your opportunity to gather all the information that are going to build the foundation for your clienteling. So when you have a customer who comes into the store who's in front of you, especially when it's a new customer, it's so important to ask elevated questions. And what I mean by that is, an elevated question is a question that's going to give you an elevated response, something that's going to be useful for you in building that relationship. If a customer comes into the store and you ask basic questions, you're going to get basic answers, right? So if somebody comes in and you say, well, how can I help you today? What are they going to say? They're going to say, well, I'm just looking, thank you. It's a question that doesn't give you any valuable information. But if somebody walks into the store and they're carrying a shopping bag from another brand, right? Maybe it's a brand that you shop at and you can connect with them that way. Maybe the lady is wearing an incredible dress and you can have a conversation about that. Maybe she has a cute dog with her and you can talk about dogs and oh my gosh, it's so cute and adorable. I have a dog myself. There's so many different ways that you can connect with people. But it's really important when that customer is in the store that you ask those elevated questions, because that's how you get those elevated answers, and that's how you gain those insights that you can use to enrich the client profile. So as soon as that customer leaves and you had that amazing experience with them, you're going to want to take all of that information that you've gathered, everything that you've learned, and you're going to want to plug that into your clienteling platform. You're going to want to, record any special dates that you've learned, any hobbies that you've learned that the customer is interested in, really anything that you talked about that you feel could be useful for your future outreach. That way it's fresh in your mind and you're recording it well, and when you won't forget something. And then later on, when you're looking to clientele, you're going to have more opportunities to reach out to that person, right? So if you know that the client loves dogs, maybe there's a local dog show or something, you can reach out to the customer about that. Maybe you learned that she likes golfing. So maybe, future outreach could be something about, hey, our company just came out with a new line of golfing apparel, and I would love to show it to you. When can you come in for an appointment? Let's celebrate with some champagne and hang out, and we can try on some of the new collection together. But whatever the case, it's so important that you first establish that connection in the store and ask those elevated questions. And then later on, when you follow up through clienteling, you can build that emotional connection because you have information that you can use to connect with the customer. But it's so important that you record that information after that first interaction. Otherwise, you're going to forget. And I would also say that relationships are built over time. So don't feel like you need to plug in everything in the client profile at once. You're going to learn a little bit about that customer during each subsequent visit. So, find out what you can during that first discovery, but, enjoy the experience of getting to know them. And, each interaction that you have, you're going to learn a little bit more, and you can use that to further enrich the client profile.
I think that's a brilliant point about elevated questions bring elevated answers, and it does set the foundation for building a great relationship with your clients. Okay, so how do you measure the success of a clienteling strategy?
Sure. Well, I think this is going to be a little bit different for everybody. It's really going to depend what the goals are that you set. I think, the biggest one is going to be revenue, right? So, subsequent to implementing this clienteling strategy, have we seen the needle move in terms of our revenue? If the answer is yes, then I would say that, that was a successful rollout. But, you can look at the various UPTs for your organization, or various KPIs for your organization. Are we seeing an increase in the average basket? Are we seeing an increase in the number of units per transaction? Are we seeing, a reactivation of lapsed clients? That's always a big one. And that would be clients who maybe shopped during this period last year who haven't come back to shop with the brand. Are we successfully reactivating those people? And, maybe some of the more quantitative or qualitative things are, what's the level of excitement from the client? Are our clients getting excited about shopping with us? Are they responding to our outreach? But I think ultimately the measure of success is going to vary depending on the goals and the objectives that you set in the beginning of your strategy. And that's why I think it's so important to have a written strategy. And I think this is where, so many brands are challenged. They say they want to get into clienteling, and then they just kind of tell their team, okay, well, have at it, let's do it. But they don't really have a plan. So I think it's really important to write down your strategy, Maybe even post it on the wall by your desk, write a simplified version of your strategy, put some bullet points on the wall and look at that every single day so that when you're having meetings with the team, when you're talking with the team, you have something to reference every single day. And you can ask yourself at the end of the day, did we take actions today? Did we work on behaviors today that are actively contributing to the achievement of our clienteling strategy? And if the answer is no, that's okay. Sometimes you fall short. But the following day, make a considerable effort to make sure that you are taking actions and behaviors to get back on track. And I think if you do that, whatever your goals may be, I think you'll start seeing measurable increases in your various metrics for however you decided to measure the success of your strategy.
Great, that's a wonderful answer. Thank you, Jeff. So what are some of the common challenges that retailers face when implementing a clienteling strategy?
Well, I think when you're managing a large team, there's going to be some people where, you give them an ask and they respond right away the way that you want them to. There's going to be some people who, may be more of a challenge. It may be that they don't see the value, or maybe they lack the capability at that point in time to meet your expectations. And that's okay. I think that's where communication comes in, right? You as a leader have to explain to your team, how this is going to bring value not only to the company, but also to them personally, right? By building better relationships with your customers, they're going to come in more frequently, they're going to shop with you more often, they're going to spend more money, which means more money in your pocket, right? It means more money in the company's pocket, which means that we can make better investments in you, right? We will have more opportunities for training, for staff parties, for merit increases, bonuses. So it really benefits everybody. And the more products we sell, the better assortment of products that we're going to get in the store, right? So being able to articulate how it benefits everybody is going to be so important to getting that buy-in. I really think the buy-in is the biggest part. But I think it's also important whenever you roll out something new to over-manage that process. And what I mean by that is, really verifying the quality of the work, checking in with your team, asking for feedback, asking them to show you their outreach. I think that's so important. Leadership doesn't always have all the answers, but I think that when you talk something through with your team, normally between the two of you or between several people, you can usually come up with a great solution, once you start bouncing some ideas around. So I think sometimes, if a client advisor isn't getting the results that they had hoped for, maybe saying, well, okay, let's look at your outreach together and let's see, what that outreach looks like. And, maybe we can compare your outreach to some of your peers who are getting a great result, and we can see what similarities and what differences there are. And if there's somebody on the team who's getting a really great result, let's see what they're doing that's different, and we can find out how to emulate that to help you get the same result, right? So I think that collaboration is so important, and there's always going to be different levels of competency for each task, for each assignment that people are assigned. Not everybody is good at everything, right? We all have our strengths and weaknesses, but I think that when you talk things out with people and you have a two-way dialogue, usually when you collaborate, you can come up with great ideas. So I think for me, from my personal experience, I think just getting that buy-in from the team can sometimes be a challenge, but when you have the dialogue and you speak about it often and you solicit feedback, I think that's when you have the opportunity to create value and explain what the value is. And then I think also just helping people to be successful is important. You can't just give a task to somebody. You really have to hold their hand and work with them when they're doing something new to help them to be excellent at what you've asked of them. So I would say those are probably the two biggest challenges. Of course, each team is different. The dynamic of each team is different. So you may find that you have different challenges. And I think with anything new, you're going to fail sometimes. And that's okay. Some things are going to go well, some things aren't going to go well. And I think you just have to learn from your failures and move forward. And as long as you learn from mistakes and things that don't go well, and you take actions to do them differently the next time, it can be a good thing. It can be a great learning experience for everybody.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I love your point about how communication is key, and it's a big driver of success, be it with your customers or your sales team. So thank you. And then just to round up, what are your top 3 best practices to refine your clienteling strategy?
Sure. Well, I would I like to keep things simple. So I would say I would give 3 best practices. I would say remain focused, reference your plan often, and speak about it every day. And I can elaborate a little bit on those. So remain focused. Like I mentioned, reference your plan daily. Look at it every single day, because if you reference it every day, you're gonna find yourself asking the question, are the actions that myself and my team are taking today, are they actively contributing to our success? And it'll help you to stay on track. So remain focused, reference your plan every day, and then also speak to it every day. During your morning meeting, it's really important to bring up clienteling, but find different ways to engage your team and different ways to bring it up in a way that isn't, doesn't sound like you're hounding them or providing instruction every day. Find a way to celebrate successes. If somebody on your team had a really big sale yesterday, or maybe it wasn't a big sale, but maybe they just provided a really incredible experience. They reached out to somebody for a birthday, and they came in and they had a really great time shopping. Celebrate that. Share that with everybody on the team. Everyone likes to be recognized for a job well done, and I think when you can reward people, when you can celebrate people and bring attention to the great work that they're doing, everybody on the team is going to be excited for that person, and everybody is going to want to be that person that's being recognized. So find a way to celebrate, find a way to acknowledge. So I would say those would be my 3 main takeaways: remain focused, reference your plan often, and speak to it every single day.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I think that's a wonderful way to wrap up this best strategies for clienteling. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. It looks like we might have one. Oh, it's good morning. Yeah, if there's any questions, please just drop them in. Suzanne's saying thank you, Jeff.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for joining us, Suzanne.
Got one question. How much time should you spend on building your strategy each week?
Well, I think the strategy itself, you probably don't need to spend too much time working on. I think you should really plan your strategy at the beginning of the year or beginning of the quarter. I do think it's important to periodically check in to make sure that your strategy is working. So if you find that your strategy has hit a wall or isn't producing the results that you had hoped for, then I think it can be an opportunity to maybe explore other alternative ways of accomplishing your goals. I would say for clienteling in general, for the client advisors, I think that's where the time should really be devoted. I think a minimum of 30 minutes per day is going to vastly contribute towards the achievement of your goals. Obviously, the more time that you devote to something, the better result that you can expect. But I think a minimum of 30 minutes per day spent on clienteling is important. And in terms of your strategy, maybe check in every quarter and see how things are going. And if you find that, maybe you were previously getting a great result, but now, it's the results have, maybe plateaued a little bit, maybe that's an opportunity to explore some alternate ways that you could, work towards achieving your goals. And I'm big on collaboration. I love when I was in retail, I would always love partnering with my fellow senior leaders. When I was at Tiffany, for instance, I know, Jill Grande's on the call. I would always check with her and bounce ideas off of her for ways that I could do better, or things that she was doing that was, was going well. So, I think find your people in your organization, that are experts and people who you admire, and bounce ideas off of them. And that's going to help you to perfect your clienteling strategy.
Great, thank you. And we've just got a couple more questions. One is, how many goals do you set each week?
How many goals do we set each week? Well,
yeah.
I think the goals, the overall goals for the strategy would really remain the same. I do think that it's important to give people benchmarks to go by. So, maybe you give an outreach goal each week, a minimum number of outreach that you would expect. But I think it's really going to vary depending on what your overall goals and what your overall objectives are that you're trying to accomplish. But I always liked giving an overall goal. I know Suzanne's on the call, and when Suzanne and I work together, Suzanne knows I would always give a thank you note goal for each week, and a minimum number of thank you notes to send out. And it just ensures that there's a certain level of performance taking place. But ultimately, I think quality is so much more important than quantity. So I think it's really going to vary depending on the brand.
Great, thank you. And last one we have, what do you think is the most important? What do you think is the most important information for sales associates to be adding to their CRM profiles?
Well, I think it's going to be the qualitative information. Things like what are the clients' hobbies? What do they like to do? What do they do on the weekends with their family? What are their children's names? Everybody likes to be remembered, right? So if somebody just reaches out to you and says, hey, I have this new jacket in that I think you'd like. What do you think? That's not a bad outreach, but if you can say, hey, Katie, I know that you had mentioned your daughter was going back to school and you're helping her to move into the dorm. How did that go? How's her move? How's she enjoying everything? That's going to be far more powerful, because you're going to feel remembered, right? You had a specific conversation about something, and that person remembered you. They took the time to register and remember that conversation. So now we have a personal connection. So now when I reach out to you about that same jacket, you're going to be far more engaged, because we already have a friendship, essentially, right? So I think enriching the client profile with information that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the brand is going to be the most powerful information. And I think customers today, they are so savvy. Sometimes they come in knowing as much or more than the client advisors do, because they do their research, they do their homework. So being able to form an authentic connection with people it is so important in this day, because the clients have options, right? And they know what the options are. So building those authentic relationships, that's how you're going to build your business.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I think that's a great point about how value-driven experiences are the ones that create relationships and memories for the clients. And I think that's all the questions we have. So just move on to the next
there was one here from Suzanne. I would love to see your software. For anybody who would like a demo of BSPK, you can definitely reach out to myself or Katie, or visit our website, bspk.com. And you can request a demo, and it would be our pleasure to show that to you. So just reach out, and we'd be glad to set up a call for you.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for coming. Our next Clienteling 101 is going to be focusing on how to motivate your sales teams, and it will be on Tuesday, August 22nd. So please all join us for that, and feel free to invite friends. And we'll be sending up a sum up of today's seminar. So thank you, and please, if you can, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time.